After my grandfather's funeral, my father took $10 million as a discount and drove me out of the house, saying, "You are no longer needed by anyone." But the lawyer laughed the next day and asked him, "Have you ever read the commandments?" The rain drummed on the black umbrellas, as if trying to muffle the sobs of the people gathered around the freshly dug grave. I stood staring at the dark brown coffin decorated with white lilies, my grandfather's favorite flower. My fingers clutched the tear-dampened handkerchief so tightly that my nails dug into my palm. I couldn't believe that I would never hear his warm laugh or feel the calming weight of his hand on my shoulder again. Today we say goodbye to William Bennett. The priest's voice tore through the veil of my thoughts. A loving father, father-in-law, and grandfather. Standing next to me was my father Robert, a tall, slender man of 59 with perfectly styled gray hair. His face resembled a stone mask, not a single tear, not a single tremor in his lips. He stood straight, as if he were at a business meeting, not his own father's funeral. "It had to happen," he muttered, not looking in my direction. "87 is a respectable age." I didn't answer. Yes, my grandfather lived a long life, but for me, he left too soon. He was the only person who truly understood me since my mother died 20 years ago. He was the one who hugged me when I was in pain and rejoiced in my small victories when my father didn't even notice them. When the ceremony was over, people started to leave. Someone came up to me with awkward hugs and cliched phrases of condolence. Aunt Margaret, my father's cousin, hugged me tightly, whispering, "He was such a good man." I nod, unable to say a word. "Kelly, let's go." My father's voice, firm and unapologetic, brought me back to reality. Marcus is waiting for us at the house for the reading of the will. My father was already sitting in his black Audi, tapping his fingers impatiently on the steering wheel. I sat down next to him, feeling my black coat clinging to the seat. "There's probably going to be a lot of boring legal formalities," he said as he pulled out of the cemetery. I was silent again, looking out the window at the landscape, which was blurred by rain and tears. Grandpa's house, a spacious two-story Victorian mansion, seemed especially empty and dark today. I had spent many happy moments there, summer vacations, Christmas holidays, Sunday lunches. Now it was just a building without a soul. In the living room, Marcus Gale, a gray-haired man in his 60s, who had been my grandfather's lawyer and friend for the past 30 years, was waiting for us. His face was serious, but his eyes looked at me with warmth. "Kelly, Robert," he nodded to us. "If you're ready, we can get started." We sat down on the couch, my father straightening his back tensely, and I clenched my knees, trying to concentrate. Marcus opened a dark blue folder and began to read in an official tone. "I, William Henry Bennett, being of sound mind, make my last will and testament." I listened as my grandfather bequeathed some personal belongings to old friends, made donations to several charitable organizations, and wrote small sums to distant relatives. It all seemed so formal, so final. "To my son Robert William Bennett," Marcus continued, "I leave the sum of $10 million. My heart skipped a beat. $10 million? I knew my grandfather was wealthy, but I had never imagined such a sum. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed my father raise his head sharply. His face first showed shock, then disbelief, and then something like joy. It was the first emotion I'd seen on his face all day. "Say that again, please," he asked, as if he couldn't believe his ears. $10 million, Marcus repeated, then continued to read the terms of the estate. I barely listened to the legal details that followed. My attention was riveted on my father, who had completely transformed. His shoulders straightened, his eyes lit up, and even the corners of his lips began to lift in a subtle smile. Marcus said something about the watch collection, family photo albums, and grandfather's library that were bequeathed to me, but I was still stunned by the amount of money my father had received. I wasn't jealous. My grandfather had the right to dispose of his property as he saw fit. But the contrast between my father's indifference to my grandfather when he was alive and his sudden revival after the news of his inheritance was striking. After the reading, his father shook Marcus's hand vigorously. "When can we formalize the paperwork?" he asked, barely able to contain his excitement. "I'll have all the necessary documents ready in a few days," Marcus replied. "There are some legal details that need to be—" Of course," his father interrupted. "Just let me know when it's ready." On the way home, my father was unusually talkative. 10 million, Kelly, can you imagine? He was almost bouncing in the seat. "I can buy that house in Palm Springs I've been dreaming of for a long time." "Dad, we just buried Grandpa," I reminded him quietly. Of course," he waved his hand. "But life goes on, doesn't it?" William understood that, which is why he left me such a generous inheritance. Our house was much more modest than my grandfather's. A simple two-story house in the suburbs where I grew up and where I moved back 3 months ago after breaking up with David, my partner of 6 years. It was supposed to be a temporary solution until I found a new job and settled in. Losing my teaching position due to downsizing a month ago made things even more difficult. As soon as we crossed the threshold, my father headed for the bar in the corner of the living room and poured himself a generous shot of whiskey. "To William," he raised his glass, "and to a new life." I slumped wearily onto the couch, still dressed in my black dress. Emotional exhaustion was showing. I felt empty and powerless. "You know," my father suddenly spoke, sitting down across from me with a second glass of whiskey, "I think this is a sign that it's time to change our lives." "What do you mean?" I asked, feeling inexplicably tense. "Kelly, you're 32 years old." His voice became harder. "You're living with your father again, with no job, no prospects. It's not normal." His words hit me like a slap in the face. "I'm looking for a job," I replied. "And it's temporary, you know." "It's been temporary for 3 months," he interrupted. "To be honest, I had planned to talk to you about it earlier, but with my grandfather's death, I didn't have time." He took another sip and continued. "Now that I have this inheritance, I want to start a new life. Maybe move, travel, and I don't need a burden in the form of an adult daughter who can't take care of herself." "A burden?" My throat caught again. "Dad, I've never been a burden. I pay my share of the bills, I cook, I clean." "It's not the same." He waved me off. "You've always been tied to my wallet. First college, then your failed attempt to open private lessons, and now this. I'm tired of being your insurance policy." I stared at him, not believing my ears. Had money really changed him that much in just a few hours? Or had he always thought so, but kept it to himself? "I'll give you 24 hours, he said, finishing his whiskey. "Tomorrow night I want you out of here." 24 hours? I could barely speak. "Not my problem," he shrugged. "You can ask a friend." At 32, it's time to learn to stand on your own 2 feet. "How can you?" Tears streamed down my cheeks again. "On the day of Grandpa's funeral." "Enough drama, Kelly," he cut me off, standing up. "It's time to realize a simple truth. No one needs you anymore. Not me, not your late grandfather, not your David, who ran off with that graduate student. Start your adult life at last." He put the glass down and went to his room, leaving me stunned and broken. That night was the longest of my life. I got my suitcases out of the closet and started mechanically packing, trying to figure out what to take and what to leave. I called Elaine, my best friend from college, who offered her couch without hesitation. "As long as you need," she said, and for the first time that day, I felt at least some support under my feet. In the middle of the night, I found an old box of photos that I had been keeping in my closet. One of them showed me, 10 years old, sitting on my grandfather's shoulders at the zoo. We are both laughing, and the sun is shining on his glasses. In another, my grandfather is teaching me how to plant roses in his garden. In another, we are together at my college graduation, his eyes full of pride. I clutched the photos to my chest and finally allowed myself to give in to my grief. I sobbed, choking on my tears, mourning not only my grandfather, but also the child who had once believed that her father loved her. Now I knew the truth, for him. I had always been just a burden that he endured. And now, with my grandfather's money in his pocket, he no longer saw the need to maintain this illusion. Through the open window, the sounds of the night city came into the room. I looked at the stars, as distant and cold as my future, and thought, how will I live without you, Grandpa? You were the only one who really loved me. The first night at Elaine's was anxious. I hardly slept, turning from side to side on the unfamiliar couch, reliving yesterday's events. I still couldn't believe that my father had thrown me out of his life so easily once he found out about the inheritance. But if I was honest with myself, the signs were always there, I just refused to see them. I was 12 when my mother fell ill. Her pancreatic cancer developed at lightning speed. Only 4 months passed from diagnosis to funeral. I remember sitting in the hospital room, holding her cold hand, as she tried to smile through the pain. Take care of Dad, she whispered the day before she died. It's going to be hard for him. I nodded, not realizing the true meaning of her words. Only later did I realize that my mother, Sarah, was the emotional buffer between my father and me. She smoothed out the sharp edges, translated his harsh phrases into language I could understand, and found moments in his cold achievements that I could be proud of. After her death, the house became quiet and empty. My father threw himself into his work at the law firm, often returning after midnight, and sometimes not coming home at all. I was left with nannies who changed so often that I didn't even try to memorize their names. You have to be strong, my father would tell me when I cried for my mother. Tears won't change anything. You have to move on. It was then that Grandpa William began to visit more often. He lived 2 hours away, but now he came at least once a week, and later he took me to his place for the weekend. Your mother was my only daughter, he would say as we worked together in his garden, and you are an extension of her. When I look at you, I see her eyes. Unlike my father, my grandfather was never shy about showing emotion. He could burst into tears remembering my mother, or laugh until he cried at some ridiculous joke. With him, I felt like I could be myself, not the perfect, reserved girl my father wanted me to be. When I was 15, I called my father after an important school speech that he was supposed to attend. Dad, where are you? I just finished my speech. An emergency came up, Kelly. He sounded distant. How did it go? I won, I answered quietly. First place in the speech contest. Good for you, he replied mechanically. It's the Bennett genes? Grandpa's here, I added. He videotaped the whole thing. Tell him I said hello, my father said before hanging up. Only later did I learn that the urgent matter was a card game in the basement casino. His addiction to gambling began unnoticed. Sports betting with colleagues, a few games of poker on weekends. But gradually, it turned into an obsession. One evening, when I was 16, I went into his office to get a stapler and came across a stack of bills hidden under the folders. The red overdue and last warning marks were striking. Next to them were letters from creditors threatening legal action. When I tried to talk to him about it, he exploded. You're going through my stuff? That's none of your business, Kelly. I'm a grown man, and I can handle my own finances. But Dad, if we have a problem... We're not in trouble, he cut her off. You have a roof over your head, food on the table, school paid for. What more do you want? I don't need advice from a teenager. After that incident, he started locking his office and never talked about money in my presence. But the tension at home was growing. Sometimes the phone would ring in the middle of the night, and I would hear my father arguing quietly but fiercely with someone. Sometimes he would disappear for a few days, returning either euphoric, with expensive gifts, or gloomy and irritated. When it came time to choose a college, my father told me bluntly, choose a local university. There is no money for private schools. But I dreamed of Cornell's Faculty of Education. When the acceptance letter came, I cried with happiness. And then I cried with disappointment, realizing that I would not be able to accept the offer. I'll think of something, my grandfather said when I shared my grief with him. Your mother would have wanted you to get the best education possible. 2 weeks later, he invited my father and me to dinner and announced that he would pay for my college education. I've been putting money aside for Sarah, he explained. She would have wanted it to go towards Kelly's education. My father looked both relieved and ashamed. His pride had been hurt, but his financial problems left him no choice but to accept the help. On one condition, Grandpa added, looking at his father, you don't gamble anymore. No more cards, no more bets, no more casinos. I don't know what you're talking about, his father replied tensely. Don't lie to me, Robert. His grandfather's voice became steely. I know where they came from. If you want your daughter to get an education, you will agree to treatment for gambling addiction. The father hit the table with his fist. You don't have the right to put conditions on me. I do when it comes to the well-being of my granddaughter, the grandfather calmly replied. Eventually, the father agreed to therapy, albeit reluctantly. He attended Gamblers Anonymous meetings for several months, but I don't know if it helped. He never talked about it with me, and if he did break down, he hid it well. In college, I met Elaine, my roommate, a smart, straightforward girl from Philadelphia who studied psychology. We hit it off right away, and she often came to visit us on holidays when she couldn't get home. He's a narcissist, she told me after our first meeting. A classic case. Everything revolves around him, his needs, his feelings. He wasn't always like this, I defended him. After my mom died. Loss doesn't justify emotional abuse, Kelly, Elaine interrupted me. He criticizes your every move, devalues your accomplishments, and makes you feel guilty for no reason. It's not a healthy relationship. I denied it. But deep down inside, I knew she was right. My grandfather was the only healthy support in my life. He came to every important moment in college, speeches, awards, and of course, graduation. My father had to be there too, he promised. But when the day came, I received a call from his secretary. Miss Bennett, unfortunately, your father is delayed in an important meeting in Atlantic City. He sends his apologies and says he is very proud of you. Atlantic City, the casino, the day of my graduation. Grandpa was there, of course. He sat in the front row, applauded when I received my diploma, and hosted a fancy dinner for me and my friends. Don't think about your father, he said, when he noticed the sadness in my eyes. Some people just don't know how to be present for others. It's not your fault. After college, I started working as an elementary school teacher, fulfilling my dream. My grandfather helped me with the down payment for a small apartment, and I started building my own life. Over the next few years, my relationship with my father remained tense but stable. Rare calls, awkward dinners on holidays, occasional emails. And then David, a history teacher, came into my life. We met at a pedagogical conference. Tall, with a warm smile and dimpled cheeks, he charmed me with his passion for education and genuine interest in people. For 6 years we were together, planning our future, talking about a house together, and maybe children. But 6 months ago, everything fell apart. David admitted that he had fallen in love with someone else, his graduate student Alice. The story was as banal as a bad TV show, a girl 12 years younger who looked at him with admiration and had no past baggage, as David put it. We just went in different directions, Kelly, he explained as he packed his things. And with Alice, I feel young again. I was devastated. We rented an apartment together, and I couldn't afford to pay for it on my own, especially after the school was cut due to budget constraints. That's when my grandfather got sick, heart problems that led to complications. And although I hated the idea, temporarily moving back in with my father seemed like the only sensible thing to do. He reluctantly agreed, but set clear rules. I had to pay the utilities, cook, and clean. This is not a hotel, he repeated, and not forever. 6 months at most to get back on my feet. 3 months later, my grandfather died. And now, less than a day after his funeral, I stood with 2 suitcases on the doorstep of the house I grew up in. Are you sure you have everything? My father asked coldly. watching me try to stuff the last sweater into the overflowing bag. Yes, I answered quietly. I'll pick up the rest later, if that's okay. You have a week, he cut me off. Then I'll throw it all away or give it to charity. He didn't even offer me a ride to Elaine's. I hailed a taxi and waited for it at the gate, feeling my father watching me from the second-floor window. The driver, an elderly man with kind eyes, helped me load my bags. Moving? He asked kindly. Yes, I tried to smile. Sometimes it's the best thing that can happen, he nodded wisely. My daughter also recently moved after a divorce. It was scary at first, but now she says it was the best decision she ever made. I didn't say anything as I watched my home, or now ex-home, fade into the distance. At the age of 32, with 2 suitcases and a broken heart, I was leaving for the unknown. Without a job, without a partner, without my grandfather, who had always been my support. The car stopped at Elaine's house, and I felt my knees trembling as I got out of the taxi. The fear of the unknown was almost paralyzing. But I knew that there was no turning back. There were only the fragments of my past life, and an uncertain future that I had to somehow build from scratch. Elaine's apartment was smaller than I remembered. 1 room with a tiny kitchen and a bathroom where one person could barely turn around. But it smelled like cinnamon and fresh coffee, and there was a vase of tulips on the table. The couch pulls out, Elaine explained, as she helped me with my bags. It's not the most comfortable in the world, but it'll have to do for now. Thank you, I whispered, feeling the tears come back to my eyes. I don't know how— Don't even get me started, she interrupted me. You would have done the same for me. The next few days blurred into a dull stream. Waking up on an uncomfortable couch, endlessly scrolling through job postings on my phone, calling schools that were very sorry but not hiring at the moment. I tried not to disturb Elaine, who worked as a psychologist in a private clinic and often consulted clients online from home. In the evenings, we sat with wine on her small balcony, and I could finally get it off my chest. I don't understand how money has changed him so much, I confessed after another hard day. It's like he's been waiting his whole life to get rid of me. Money doesn't change people, it just makes them more real, Elaine replied, pouring us another glass. It's just that now he can afford not to hide it. It was hard to disagree, especially when I started seeing his posts on social media. The first photos appeared just a week after the funeral. My father driving a shiny new Jaguar with the caption, "New beginning, new opportunities." Then a photo of a huge house in a prestigious neighborhood with panoramic windows and a swimming pool. "Finally my dream home," he commented. I stopped checking his page when I saw a photo of him hugging a young woman who looked not much older than me around the waist. With Amanda in Palm Springs. "Life is beautiful," the caption cut to my heart. But the worst was yet to come. "Kelly, honey, I just wanted to check on you," she began in an unusually cautious tone. "You know we've always loved you, no matter what." "What are you talking about, Aunt?" I tensed, sensing something unpleasant lurking behind this introduction. "Your father told us what happened," she sighed. "I understand that William's death was hard on everyone, but to demand a piece of the inheritance, it's a bit much, don't you think?" My stomach twisted. "What?" "I didn't demand anything." "Oh." My aunt was silent for a moment. "Robert said you threatened to sue if he didn't give you a third of the money, that's why you left the house." I closed my eyes, trying to hold back my anger. "That's a lie. He kicked me out the day after the funeral. He gave me a day to pack." "Oh, God," her voice trembled. "I don't know who to believe." "Believe who you want," I replied tiredly, but I never asked him for a cent of that money. After this conversation, others began. Cousins, aunts, old family friends. Some were just interested in how I was doing, while others openly accused me of being greedy. Few believed that my father had simply kicked me out. After all, what father would do that to his daughter? After 3 weeks of living on Elaine's couch, I realized that something had to change. My savings were melting away, and there were almost no prospects of finding a job in my field of study before the new school year. A new restaurant is opening in our neighborhood, Elaine said one day when she came home from work. I know it's not what you want, but I'll take any job, I interrupted. The next morning, I stood at the entrance to Maple Grove, a brand new restaurant with a pretense of sophistication, wearing a business suit I had borrowed from Elaine that was a little too big for me. The manager, a middle-aged woman with a stern face, looked at my resume with obvious surprise. A master's degree in pedagogy, 6 years of teaching. And you want to be a waitress? Yes, I answered firmly. I need a job. I'll learn quickly. She shrugged her shoulders. It's up to you. Shifts are 8 hours long. We divide the tips according to the pool system, and we give you a uniform. Can you start tomorrow? And so my new life began. I got up at 6 to catch the morning shift, spent 8 hours running between tables with heavy trays, memorizing complex orders, and smiling at customers who sometimes acted as if I were part of the furniture. In the evening, I would return to Elaine's with swollen feet and a sore back, but with a few tens of dollars in my pocket. I need to find my own place, I told Elaine after a month of this. I can't take your couch forever. Don't rush, she argued. Save some money first. Rent is outrageous these days. She was right, and I agreed to wait another month. And then the thing I was most afraid of happened. It was a Friday, the evening shift. The restaurant was packed with young couples, businessmen, and a group celebrating a birthday. I was balancing a tray full of martinis when I spotted them, my father and the same young blonde from the photo. They were sitting at a table by the window, and my father was opening a bottle of expensive wine. My heart was pounding so hard that I was afraid they would hear it across the room. My first urge was to run away, hide in the kitchen, ask another waiter to serve their table. But something inside me rebelled. I hadn't done anything wrong. It was my father who should be ashamed. I took a deep breath and walked over to their table. Good evening, my name is Kelly. I'm your waitress tonight. May I offer you one of our specialty appetizers? My father looked up from the menu and froze. What are you doing here? He blurted out. I'm working, I answered, trying to keep my tone professional. The young woman looked between us, obviously puzzled. Do you know each other? She asked. This is my daughter, the father grunted, not looking at her. The words hit me like a slap in the face, but I held back a smile. So, how about some appetizers? I can recommend the beetroot carpaccio. It's especially good tonight. We'll be going, my father said sharply, pushing back his chair. You're embarrassing yourself. Embarrassing myself? I finally lost my temper. You kicked me out of the house after 40 years and lied to the whole family, and I'm embarrassing myself? You're 32, he said, as if that were the most important fact. You really wanted my money. Your money? I shook my head. Grandpa's money, which you got even though you practically ignored him for years. Now the other customers were looking at us. A young woman, Amanda, according to social media, looked like she wanted to fall through the ground. Robert, maybe we should leave, she whispered. Yes, go, I stepped aside. This is my workplace, and I'm not going to let you ruin it too. My father grabbed his jacket and threw a few bills on the table. For the inconvenience, he said, turning to me. That's you, always the victim, always blaming others for your failures. That's why you're alone at 32, working as a waitress and living on someone else's couch. He walked out, dragging a bewildered Amanda with him, and I remained standing, feeling the eyes of the entire restaurant on me. Tears were stinging my eyes, but I didn't let them spill. Kelly, the manager approached. Are you okay? Yes, I squeezed out. It's just a family matter. Take 5 minutes, she said, unexpectedly gentle, and then get back to work. I went out the back door and finally allowed myself to cry. How could he? Ex-daughter. These words cut like a knife. Had 10 million clouded his mind so much that he really disowned his only child? After that meeting, I seriously started thinking about moving. maybe to another city, away from the memories and the possibility of running into my father again by chance. San Diego, Portland, Denver. I was looking for teaching jobs all over the country, although I realized that the chances were slim. One evening, after a particularly exhausting shift, I was lying on Elaine's couch and staring at the ceiling. It seemed to me that life was passing me by, and I was stuck in some kind of limbo knot at home, but not in my place either, without the job I love, without a family, without a clear future. Then the phone rang. An unfamiliar number. Kelly Bennett? A familiar voice said. Yes, it's me. This is Marcus Gale, your grandfather's lawyer. He spoke quietly, but confidently. I need to see you urgently. It's about William's will. My heart clenched. Is something wrong? Not over the phone, he replied. This is critical information. Can you come to my office tomorrow morning at 10 a.m.? Yes, of course, I agreed, trying to calm my sudden anxiety. I'll be there. Good. He sounded relieved. And, Kelly, don't tell your father about this meeting. He hung up the phone, leaving me in complete confusion. What could be so important that it needed to be discussed in person? And why shouldn't I have told my father about it? That night, I hardly slept, going over different scenarios in my head. Maybe they found some more of my grandfather's assets? Or were there problems with the transfer of the inheritance? Or, God forbid, did someone challenge the will? Morning came, and I drove to Marcus's office with the feeling that I was standing on the edge of a cliff. One more step, and my life would change forever. But in what direction I could not even imagine. Marcus Gale's office was located in a historic red brick building in the city center. I arrived 15 minutes early, nervously going over in my head all the possible reasons for this mysterious meeting. The secretary showed me to the conference room with a friendly smile, where Marcus, a gray-haired but still fit man in a gray suit, was waiting. Thanks for coming, Kelly. He shook my hand and pointed to a chair. No, thank you, I answered, trying to calm my anxiety. Marcus, what's going on? You scared me with that mysterious call. He sighed and sat down across from me. I'm sorry to be so cryptic, but the situation is delicate. No, as you asked. Good, he nodded, opening a dark blue folder, the same one from which he had read Grandpa's will. I tried to recall. You said that Grandpa left your father $10 million and me his watch collection, photo albums, and library. That's right. He looked at me carefully. But your father didn't listen to the rest of it. He was so excited about the amount that he actually missed the most important part. Marcus unfolded the documents. Robert is receiving this $10 million for a reason, as trustee. According to the terms of the will, the bulk of these funds were intended to secure your future, Kelly. I felt my breath catch in my chest. What? William clearly stated that at least $8 million of this amount was to be used to, quote, provide for the education, housing, and professional development of my granddaughter Kelly Ann Bennett, including, but not limited to, establishing an educational institution of her choice, should she so desire. I put my hand over my mouth. An educational institution? He knew about my dream? Of course, Marcus smiled softly. William spoke of you often. He knew that you dreamed of creating your own school with a progressive curriculum. Tears came to my eyes. My grandfather had always supported my love of teaching, but I didn't think he took my talk of starting my own school so seriously, an idea I shared only with him and Elaine. But why didn't you mention it at the reading of the will? Marcus shook his head. Your grandfather had a special plan. He left me very specific instructions. I was to read only the first part of the will, the $10 million for Robert, and then tell you the rest of the terms after a certain amount of time. Why? I didn't understand. Is this a joke? No, Marcus answered seriously. It was what William called a test of integrity. He wanted to see what Robert would do with the money, thinking it was all his. Would he use any of it to help you, or would he think only of himself? I felt cold inside. It was as if my grandfather had foreseen what would happen. There is a separate article in the will, Marcus continued, turning the page. If Robert violates the terms of the estate, or if his actions are contrary to the spirit of the will, all the property goes directly to you, Kelly, without him acting as an intermediary. And what has he done? I asked quietly, although I already knew the answer. A new house, a car, jewelry for his girlfriend, and not a penny for you. What's more, Marcus looked me in the eye. Robert didn't even tell me that you weren't living with him anymore. I found out from a mutual friend and started looking for you. I closed my eyes. My expulsion from the house wasn't just a manifestation of my father's callousness, it was actually a violation of the terms of the will. There's something else, Marcus added, pressing a button on the remote. The screen on the wall came to life, and I saw my grandfather, thinner than I remembered, but with the same warm smile. My dear Kelly, he began, and tears rolled down my cheeks at the sound of his voice. If you are watching this video, it means that I am no longer alive, and Marcus has told you the true terms of my will. I'm sorry to have to resort to such complicated schemes, but I know your father well. Unfortunately, Robert has always been more interested in money than in people, even when it comes to his own daughter. Grandpa coughed a little before continuing. I'm leaving my fortune to you, but on the condition that Robert has a chance to prove that he's better than I think he is. If he uses at least some of the money for your well-being, then he still has fatherly feelings. But if he thinks only of himself, well, then you'll get it all straight, just like it should be. He leaned closer to the camera. Kelly, I know how much you love teaching kids. Your dream of a school where children can learn without fear or pressure is worth pursuing. Use this money wisely. Create something that will outlive us both. And remember that I have always been proud of you, not because you are my granddaughter, but because you are a wonderful, kind, intelligent person. He smiled, and tears sparkled in his eyes. I have loved you from the first moment I picked you up, and I will always love you, even after I leave. Bye, my dear. The screen went off, and I sobbed uncontrollably. Marcus silently handed me tissues, giving me time to compose myself. He really saw it coming, I whispered at last. William knew his son very well, Marcus replied softly, and he wanted to protect you, but give Robert a chance to do the right thing. What now? I asked, wiping my eyes. I've made an appointment with your father for 2 o'clock, Marcus said, glancing at his watch. He doesn't know what it's about, but he's agreed to come. You can be present or wait in the next room. I want to be here, I answered decisively. 2 hours of waiting seemed like an eternity. I reread the will Marcus had given me, amazed at my grandfather's foresight. It contained everything from the specific conditions for the use of the money to the mechanisms of protection against Robert's possible attempts to challenge the document. At exactly 2 o'clock, the door opened, and my father walked in, elegantly dressed in a new suit, with an expensive watch on his wrist. What is she doing here? He asked Marcus sharply. Sit down, Robert, the lawyer replied calmly. My father reluctantly sat down, keeping as far away from me as possible. I have a meeting in an hour. Marcus put the open will in front of him. Robert, have you ever read your father's will? Of course, my father shrugged. You read it in front of me. No, Marcus shook his head. I only read the beginning. You were so excited at the mention of the 10 million that you didn't listen to the rest of it. What do you mean? His father tensed. That $10 million, Marcus tapped his finger on the document, was given to you as trustee, not as sole beneficiary. According to the will, most of that money is earmarked for your daughter's future. The father was petrified. His face turned white as chalk. That's impossible. It's quite possible. Marcus moved the will closer to him. Read it for yourself. Article 3, paragraph 5. My father skimmed the lines, his lips moving as he repeated the words. Then he looked up. This is some kind of mistake. Or a forgery. My father would never do such a thing. The original will was witnessed by 3 witnesses and a notary, Marcus replied calmly, and there is a video of William personally confirming his intentions. Anyway, my father straightened up, trying to look confident. The money has already been transferred to my account. Legally, it's mine. Not really. Marcus pulled out another document. According to the bank records you signed when you received the money, you agreed to abide by the terms of the will. Misuse of these funds is classified as a breach of trust. Nonsense. My father punched the table. I didn't sign anything like that. You did, Marcus calmly argued, showing the page with the signature. Unfortunately, you didn't read the fine print, a common mistake, especially when you're in a hurry to get the money. My father turned to me, his eyes blazing with anger. This is your job, isn't it? You conspired with him behind my back. No. I looked him straight in the eye. I found out about it today, just like you did. The only difference is that Grandpa knew you better than I did. Besides, Marcus interjected, there is another important clause in the will. If you violate the terms, in particular, fail to provide for your daughter's welfare, the entire estate goes directly to Kelly. This is absurd. My father jumped up. I'll challenge this in court. You can try. Marcus remained unmoved. But William was very foresighted. He had consulted 3 different inheritance law experts to make sure the will was flawless. Besides, a public trial. I don't think your new girlfriend would appreciate the details of how you kicked your own daughter out of the house the day after the funeral. The father sat down again, his face red with anger instead of white. What do you want? There are 2 options, Marcus replied. 1. You return all the remaining money, and it goes into a trust fund for Kelly. The second is that you continue as trustee, but under strict supervision and in accordance with the terms of the will. And if I refuse? Then we file a fraud suit, Marcus replied simply. And given the evidence, you'll not only lose the money, but you could also do real time. William foresaw this possibility as well. I watched my father comprehend the situation. His shoulders gradually dropped, and instead of anger, his face showed something like defeat. How much time do I have to decide? He finally asked. 48 hours, Marcus replied. Otherwise, we start legal procedures. My father stood up, avoiding my gaze. I'll be in touch, he said, and walked out, slamming the door. Marcus and I were left in silence, which seemed deafening after the emotional storm. What now? I asked, feeling strangely empty. Now we wait, Marcus answered. But rest assured, William has thought of everything. You will get what he left you, one way or another. Returning to Elaine, I tried to comprehend everything that had happened. Was I relieved? Of course I did. My grandfather's will meant financial security, the opportunity to fulfill my dream of having my own school, and an end to humiliation and the struggle for survival. But at the same time, there was bitterness in his heart. My grandfather knew that my father was not trustworthy. He knew that he would have to protect me even after his death. The fact that my grandfather had to resort to such complicated legal maneuvers finally confirmed what I had been reluctant to admit for so long. My father was not just emotionally unavailable. He really did not love me. He had never loved me. Looking out the window of the taxi on the city streets, I thought about how my grandfather's money had given me not only financial freedom, but also the bitter gift of truth. Now I knew for sure that I had always been an inconvenience, an obstacle, not a daughter to my father. This truth was painful, but perhaps it was necessary to finally start a new life without illusions. The spring sun was pouring light into a spacious classroom with brightly painted walls and colored bookshelves. I stood in the middle of the room, watching the workers install the last of the furniture small round tables instead of traditional desks, comfortable beanbags in the reading corner, and an interactive whiteboard on the wall. Through the window, we could see a playground with swings and a garden where students would be able to grow their own plants. 8 months. It took only 8 months to transform an old, abandoned former library building into the modern alternative school I had been dreaming of for years. William Bennett Academy, The gold letters on the facade shone in the sunlight as a symbol of a new beginning. "Everything is ready for tomorrow's opening," Elaine said as she walked into the classroom, tablet in hand. Elaine left her job at the clinic to become a school psychologist and my right-hand man in running the academy. Her enthusiasm and hands-on approach have been invaluable during these months of planning, renovation, and bureaucratic red tape. "I can't believe we actually did this," I said, running my hand over the smooth surface of the teacher's desk. "It's not a dream," Elaine smiled. "It's the result of your perseverance and your grandfather's faith in you." The path to this moment was not easy. After that fateful meeting with my father in Marcus Gale's office, life became a roller coaster. At first, my father threatened to sue me, then tried to persuade me to take only part of the money and leave the rest to him. When that didn't work, he disappeared for a week, apparently considering his options. I waited, realizing that the decision was up to him. During this time, I moved from Elaine's couch to a small but cozy apartment that Marcus allowed me to rent as a temporary housing option. I quit my job at the restaurant and began to immerse myself in planning the school I dreamed of, creating a place where children could learn in a safe, supportive environment, especially those who came from disadvantaged backgrounds. On the 8th day, my father finally called. His voice sounded tired and unusually humble. "I want to meet." "Not with lawyers, just you and me." We met in a park, a neutral territory. He looked aged, with shadows under his eyes, and his normally perfectly styled hair was disheveled. "I've thought about Marcus's offer," he said, looking at the ducks in the pond. I tensed, expecting another manipulation, but his words surprised me. "I want to try to be a trustee, just like my grandfather planned, but on the condition that it is clearly stated what part of the funds is intended for the school and what part remains at my disposal." "Why did you suddenly change your mind?" I asked him cautiously. He was silent for a long time, as if searching for words. "I thought a lot about my grandfather, about you, about how everything turned out. I was not a good father. But maybe it's not too late to try to change things." He sounded sincere, but I knew only too well how convincing he could be when he wanted something. "On one condition," I said firmly. "You go to treatment for your gambling addiction. A real course, not just for show." He shuddered. "I don't—" "Don't deny it," I interrupted him. "We both know that the problem hasn't disappeared. And one more thing. You agree to regular audits of all financial transactions by independent experts appointed by Marcus." He looked at me with a mixture of surprise and perhaps respect. "You've gotten tougher." "I've gotten more honest," I replied. That was the beginning of a new, difficult stage in our relationship. We signed a new agreement that gave me control over most of the inheritance, but left my father the role of trustee and a comfortable living allowance, much less than he had already spent, but still substantial. The first months of the school project were exhausting, but full of hope. I assembled a team of like-minded teachers and found the perfect building, an old library that needed renovation but had spacious rooms and a beautiful garden. At the same time, I took additional courses in educational management and alternative teaching methods. To my surprise, my father kept his end of the bargain. He attended Gamblers Anonymous meetings and therapy sessions, although he rarely talked to me about it. Our relationship remained tense, but gradually took on a new shape, more businesslike, but also more honest. "Don't think I don't see what you're doing," he said one day, when we were discussing the budget for the school renovation. "You're trying to make me feel proud of your project." "Do you?" I asked him bluntly. He was silent, looking at the architectural plans. "Maybe. It's ambitious." It was almost a compliment from him. A week before the school opened, I found an unexpected letter in my mailbox, an invitation to dinner from my father. It was unusual. We usually met in Marcus's office or in a cafe to discuss current affairs, but never at his home. His new house was smaller than the one he bought right after receiving his inheritance. Modest, but still elegant, with a garden where, to my surprise, he was barbecuing himself. You cook? I couldn't hide my surprise. I started recently, he shrugged. The therapist says it's good for grounding. Dinner was an unusual, but not unpleasant atmosphere. We talked about school, about his new job as a consultant at a law firm, about trivia. And then, over dessert, he said something I never expected to hear. I want to speak at the school's opening, if you don't mind. You? I almost choked on my coffee. Why? He looked away. Grandpa was right about me, about everything. I want to admit it publicly, to say that I'm proud of what you've done. I looked at him, searching for signs of insincerity, but I saw only an unusual vulnerability. Okay, I agreed, but no long speeches. He smiled slightly. I promise. And then the opening day came. William Bennett Academy was shining with newness, from its bright facade to its modern classrooms designed for project-based and individualized learning. The school was designed for children from 6 to 14 years old, with a special focus on those coming from difficult family circumstances. The courtyard was filled with guests, future students and their parents, educators, local officials, and members of the press. I stood on a small podium, feeling a mixture of pride and excitement. Thank you to everyone who came to share this celebration with us today. I began my speech. It is a place where every child can reach their potential, regardless of their past or circumstances. Where education is not about memorizing facts, but about fostering curiosity, compassion, and critical thinking. I spoke about our pedagogical concept, about support programs for children from disadvantaged families, about scholarships that will ensure access to quality education for all. And then I introduced my father, who approached the microphone with an unusual amount of uncertainty. Many of you know me as Robert Bennett, the son of William Bennett, after whom this school is named, he began. But not many people know that I was not as good a son as my father was. And an even worse father to my daughter, Kelly. There were whispers in the crowd, and I looked at my father in surprise. I hadn't expected such honesty. William Bennett believed in education as a tool for transforming lives. He believed in his granddaughter when I couldn't. And if he were here today, he would be proud not only of this beautiful school, but also of the incredible woman who created it, my daughter. He looked at me, and I saw something unusual in his eyes, perhaps for the first time in many years, genuine warmth. I don't deserve her forgiveness, he continued, but I am immensely proud that she was able to take the pain of her past and turn it into something that will help other children have a better future. After the official ceremony, when the guests left to tour the school, the father came to me. Can I talk to you? In private. We went to my new office, a bright room overlooking the school garden. Above the desk hung a photo of my grandfather, his smiling face as if blessing a new beginning. You said it well, I began, not knowing what to expect from this conversation. I was being sincere, he replied, walking over to the window. He was silent, as if collecting his thoughts. No, I've never told you about my father, your grandfather, what he was like when I was little. Grandfather? I was surprised. But he was always so kind, so patient. With you, yes, my father nodded, but not always with me. When I was a kid, Grandpa was different. Strict, demanding, often cruel. He rarely praised and often criticized. Everything changed after your mom was born. And then, you. I was silent, not knowing how to react to these revelations. That's not an excuse, he continued, but it might explain why I never knew how to be a good father. I repeated what I knew, what I had learned, and only now I'm beginning to realize how much pain it caused. Why are you telling me this now? I asked quietly. Because I want you to know that what you did this school, your choice to help the kids instead of getting angry, it breaks the cycle. You didn't become like me. You are better. I felt something warm flood my chest. Not quite forgiveness, but maybe understanding. Grandpa changed, I said. Maybe you can too. I'm trying, he smiled weakly, but don't expect a miracle. Some things are too deeply rooted. When he left, I stayed in the office, looking at the photo of my grandfather. Did I really know him? Was his kindness an atonement for his past mistakes? And would I ever be able to fully forgive my father, now that I knew more about his own traumas? The first academic year flew by in a whirlwind of new challenges and small victories. The academy accepted 40 students, half of whom came from difficult family circumstances, many with trauma or learning difficulties. Every day brought new stories. A girl who raised her hand for the first time in class after years of silence. A boy who discovered a talent for math that no one had ever noticed before. Parents who thanked me in tears for the changes they saw in their children. My relationship with my father remained difficult, but gradually became more open. He regularly attended therapy, continued to fight his gambling addiction, with varying success, but did not give up. We met once a month to discuss the school's financial issues, sometimes staying for dinner. The conversations were cautious, but more sincere than ever in the past. On the last day of the first school year, when the children had gone on vacation and the teachers were finalizing their final reports, I finally found time to sort through the last boxes of my grandfather's belongings that were stored in my office closet. Among the old photo albums and documents, I found an envelope with my name written in my grandfather's neat handwriting. With trembling hands, I opened it and pulled out a letter dated a month before he died. My dear Kelly, if you are reading this letter, it means that my plan worked, and you got what I left for you. But the most valuable legacy is not money or property. It is the ability to see the world as it is and still choose kindness. I know that I caused a lot of pain to your father when he was a child. I was a different person then. Harsh, impatient, often unfair. Your mother's birth made me rethink many things, but the real transformation came when you came along. In your eyes, I saw the possibility of another way to love. Your father never had that chance. He grew up with pain that will never fully heal. I tried to make up for my mistakes, but some wounds are too deep. I hope you can find it in your heart to understand him. If not forgive him, then understand him. Not for his sake, but for your own sake, to free yourself from the burden of resentment. I believe that you will be able not only to overcome the pain of your past, but also to turn it into a source of strength. What we have experienced shapes us, but does not define us. We choose who we become. Know that wherever I am, I look at you with love and pride. You are the best thing in my life, my true immortality. With eternal love, Grandpa. Tears streamed down my cheeks as I read the letter over and over again. Grandpa knew about his mistakes, about my father's injuries, about my potential strengths. He saw the full picture of our family history, with all its dark and light sides. I walked to the window, looking at the empty schoolyard, where tomorrow children will be running and laughing again. Children who may be carrying their own invisible wounds, but who will have a chance for healing and a new beginning. Have I forgiven my father completely? No, and perhaps I never will be able to fully. Some wounds are too deep, some words are impossible to forget. But I have found something more important than forgiveness. I have found the power to break the cycle of pain, to turn my own experience into a tool for helping others. My pain, my story, became the foundation for something bigger than me, a place where children can feel safe, where they are heard and seen, where their traumas do not determine their future. And in this sense, my grandfather was right. The past can be not only a burden, but also a source of incredible strength if we choose to transform it into something beautiful. I folded the letter and clutched it to my heart, feeling deeply grateful and quietly peaceful. Life is rarely perfect. The people we love can cause us the most pain. But, in the end, we choose how this pain will change us, make us bitter or compassionate, withdrawn or able to help others. I chose my path. And for the first time in many years, I felt that my grandfather, wherever he is now, was really proud of me.
Любі глядачі, дякую вам за перегляд, ставте лайки та підписуйтесь на канал. Також напишіть в коментарях, чи погоджуєтесь ви з Дженніфер, чи вона мала розказати все матері, чи ні, чи мала все розказати своєму коханцю щодо свого чоловіка, чи ні. І також прокоментуйте, чи вам сподобалось це відео.